So hello everybody, welcome to the class again. In the last lectures we were talking about the features of democracy. So we will continue again. So in the features of democracy we saw the definitions and tried to understand the different features that hidden inside the definition, and we saw that who should be the rulers, so what should be the nature of election, and who should be the people who would elect the rulers, and what should be the form of government of the democracy. So here after this brief introduction of the class in the last time, I will continue the class with discussing the important features of democracy. So here we begin now, major decisions by elected leaders. My dear friends, it appears to be just like the features that given in the book. Yes, of course it is, but this time we will try to understand what actually it is, what exactly the features is telling about. Major decisions by elected leaders. So this is a very important features of the democracy, that the major decision should be taken by the elected members or elected rulers of the country. So here we can see some countries in the world who claim themselves as the rulers or as the democratic government, but actually they are not the democratic government. However, they follow the few rules or few features of the democracy, but in fact they are not the proper democratic form of government. So at first we will take the case of Pakistan, where the people consider themselves, the governance consider themselves a democracy, but actually they are not following. Some countries like Pakistan do not follow this rule. In Pakistan, General Pervez Musharraf led a military coup in October 1999, and he overthrew and rejected the democratically formed government. He rejected the democratically formed government. He rejected the democratically formed government in the country, and he declared himself as the chief executive of the country, and later on he designated himself as the president of the country. Again in 2002, he also held a referendum in the country that granted him a 5-year extension, again to give a democratic form to his autocratic rule. In order to give a rope of the democratic to his autocratic and military rule, he formally held a referendum. What is a referendum? Now, a kind of system in which major political decision is taken in a particular country. This may be election. Here it is election. This can be election. This can be plebiscite. Okay. So this kind of thing is done when we take some important decision in the governance. Earlier the Pakistan, as you may have listened the news earlier, the Pakistani government always claiming that there must be a referendum in Jammu and Kashmir to know the will of the Jammu and Kashmiri people, whether they want to stay with India or to become a part of Pakistan. But Indian government constantly rejected the ideas of the foreign people or the Pakistani people. He projected the idea that this is our internal method and you cannot have a say in our internal matter. So finally, and with the effort of the government, the 370 articles that were designed for Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, was scrapped and finally it is made as a union territory of the country and became an integral part of the country. So leave it whatever it may be. So let's know about Musharraf. Musharraf designed a referendum in which he wanted to give a democratic rope to his rule, and he granted him a 5-year extension of his rule. That granted him a 5-year extension of the rule. But the referendum was, it is said that it was not followed the principles of the democracy. It was based on fraud and malpractices. The system had taken a very unfair means, very dirty practice in winning the election. So it has been said by many human rights activists and the popular media of Pakistan as well. And he did not stop there. Meanwhile, after passing this, he also issued a legal framework order. Okay, and there he gave more power to the president, and he made him less accountable. Okay, less accountable. He gave more power to the president. He amended the constitution of the country. He gave more power to the president and less accountable before the people. He was not answerable to the people. He was not answerable to the people for the war. And this thing is very peculiar for a democratic country. This is not happen in a democratic country. The people who are elected by the people in the democratic nation, they must have the responsibility to answer before the common people. But where we cannot see here, we cannot see in case of Parvez Musharraf in the government he designed, because he rejected the popular features of the democracy. He did not give any power to the elected ruler. Rather, he dismissed the national and provincial assemblies of the state. What did he do? Now, he committed a very big blunder. He did not give any power to the national and provincial assembly like parliament and the state legislature. And elected representatives were granted some power. They were given some power. But the final decision-making power rested with military officer and General Parvez Musharraf himself. But he gave more power to military officers and less power to the representative who are elected by the people. So it is completely violating the features of the democracy. Here we can see it is completely ignoring the important features of democracy, where we know earlier that democracy should be run on the wheels of the representative government. On the major decisions should be taken by the representative of the peoples. Okay, so but here it is completely violating. Hence we can conclude that it was not a democratic government. The same thing happened in many dictatorships and monarchies as well. So yes, are a situation this happened across the world where they just design elections, they give certain power to the elected representatives, but the final decision making power remain with the military, remain with the autocratic rulers. So therefore here we can conclude that that Pakistan under Parvez Musharraf was not a democratic government. It was not a democratic government because the reason the final decision making power was rest with the military and General Parvez Musharraf himself. As the democratic feature says that the final decision making power should be rest with the hand of those who elected by the people. But this was not seen in Pakistan, so Pakistan cannot be called a democratic country. Let's move to second features. What is the second feature? Free and fair electoral system. We have earlier seen in the Pakistan case also, there was no free and fair electoral competition. We take the case of free and fair electoral system. In China, elections are held after every 5 years for electing the country's parliament, called Kuan and Min Dai Biao Dahui, means National People's Congress. Okay, so elections is held in China, but here we will see that what kind of election it is. Okay, this is the thing that has been given here. So before contesting elections, a candidate needs the approval of Chinese Communist Party. Why should he need the approval of only Chinese Communist Party? Alright, so the government is always formed by Communist Party. Here you can understand that the government is always formed by the Chinese Communist Party and 8 allied party to it. Here, my dear friend, it clearly says that China is not following a democratic election because people do not have free choice. People do not have free choice. They do not have option. Now you have to only select from the Communist Party. But in countries like America, England, India, you have free choice. We have many parties. Some countries have 2 or 3 parties. Some countries are bi-party. Some countries are multi-party system. But they have free choice. But in China, in case of China, how our election is conducted in every 5 years or 6 years, but there is no free choice for the people. So therefore, it cannot be called a proper a proper electoral system. In the same case is there, since its independence in 1930, Mexico hold election after every 6 year to elect president. But until 2000, every election was won by a party called PRI, Institutional Revolutionary Party. You just the opposite it reads, nah? The Institutional Revolutionary Party. But how did they win all the election? The opposition party did contest in the election, but never managed to win any election. And what was the reason behind they were always winning the election? Now, what was the reason behind they were in election? Now, all the government employees, all the officials, all the teachers were forced to attend the party meeting of PRI. All the people were asked to promote the ideas of PRI. They were adopting very dirty tricks and unfair means in the election. Therefore, there was no fair election. There was no fair election in Mexican case. So here China and Mexico did not have a free and fair choice in the election. So both the countries cannot be called the democratic nation. However, they are holding election, but the election are not following the free and fair electoral system. So here you got the second features of the democracy. In a democracy, the election should be based on the principle of free and fair electoral system, where the party who is in current power must have a free or fair chance of losing. But the PRI party never lost in the election. He always, by hook and by crook, won the elections in the country. You understand me? You got me? समझ में आ गया? So he never, the party of PRI never lost in the election because it took data tricks. It even took the electoral poll even in the last minute. Okay, so it was a kind of very wrong activities or malpractice done by the country. So you understood the second features. Then third features: one person, one vote, one value. I wrote 2 times here. One person, one vote, one value. Another feature is one person, one vote, one value. But my dear friends, as I have been telling you constantly, that there are a number of countries in the world who are holding election but not adopting free and fair measures in the election. Free and fair measures in the election and many more things in the election. And beside this, we know that the democracy is a form of government where everybody has a share. But today I will tell the story of some country where every citizen in the country do not have any role in the country. Let's take the example of few countries. Democracy is based on a principle of political equality. Political equality is there in the democratic country. But however, there are many instances of denial or not given chance of equal right to vote. Let's take the example. Until 2015 in Saudi Arabia, women did not have the right to vote. Till 2015. The women are considered very, they are not eligible for the vote. They did not have a part in the governance of the country, in the decision making affairs of the country. So it was holding election. But can we call it a proper democratic election? Can we call it a democratic government? You know about the Crown Prince Salman something. Yes, a Crown Prince. That is very a monarchical kind of system. They hold election for just for formality and to show up to the rest of the world. Another case, Estonia has made its citizenship rule in such a way that the people of the Russian minority find very hard or find it very difficult to right to vote. So the electoral system of Estonia, a European country, now it shows that the people of the Russian minority do not have a right to vote. They do not have a right to vote. Another case, in Fiji, the electoral system shows that the vote of an indigenous Fiji, indigenous का मतलब native to the country, the real inhabitants of the country have more value. The vote value is more than that of the Indian Fijian. Indian Fijian in the case of the people who are outside of the country, but they are staying in the country, but it has been given as the Indian Fijians. Okay, just like we have the Anglo-Indian and right. The same way the Indian Fijians have the less value in compared to the native of the country. So this is some peculiar feature. This is the very strange features across the world who claim themselves as democratic nation, but they are not following the democratic features, the democratic nature of the principles of the democracy. But still they project themselves, still they show up themselves as the democratic nation. So definitely not a democratic government. The country I mentioned here, Saudi Arabia, Estonia, Fiji, they are not the democratic nation because they are violating the principle of one vote, one person, one value. The features of democracy, this highlights that in a democracy, each adult citizen must have one vote and one vote must have one value. So in a democracy, we come to the third features. We got the third feature. In a democracy, every adult citizen should have one vote and each vote should have one value. We got the third features of democracy. But we could not find one vote, one value and one person, same value we cannot get here. One person, one vote, one value we cannot find here. The country are violating these principles, so they cannot be called the democratic country. So dear student, now you may be thinking that why we are understanding, why we are defining the democracy. We are demarcating, we are differentiating the different countries of the world. Now one of the very, very important features of the democracy, that rule of law and respect for rights. Rule of law and respect for right. Democracy also based on the principles of law and it has certain respect for the rights of the people also. But now we will see a case where we will see that country is violating these rules and not respecting the public opinion of the country. So here the example of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe attained independence from white minority rule in 1980 and formed the country, and from then the country has been ruled by a party that led the freedom struggle called ZANU-PF. How strange name, ZANU-PF. Okay, so this was the case of Zimbabwe where they got its independence from the white minority in 1980, but the party is ruling since then. Robert Mugabe ruled the country since independence. Even if elections were held regularly, it was owned by ZANU-PF only. It was owned by the single party only. So what was the reason behind the winning of election only single party ZANU-PF? President Mugabe was very popular. It is very essential for democracy to be popular. There is no wrong in it. But also used unfair practice. But this is wrong here. We need a popular leader. But provided they should not be autocrat, they should not adopt unfair means or dirty tricks in the election. But Robert Mugabe was following that tricks. And what kind of things he was adopting? There was a law that limited the right to criticize the president. He amended the constitution of the country several times. Amended का मतलब change. He changed the constitution several times, and he made provision that the people of the country do not have a right to criticize the government, criticize the president, and he made him very less accountable as well. Just the way Parvez Musharraf done. The way Parvez Musharraf done. So here, my dear friends, as we know, now there must be the responsibility of the elected rulers. They must be answerable before the common people of the country for their work, for their function in the governance. But President Mugabe was not following. Television and radio were controlled by the government and gave only the ruling party version. How strange! Television and radios, which we consider the media as the fourth pillar of the democracy, controlled by the government. Then what the media will public? What the media will give a report? What? So, and they were forced to telecast the party's ruling party version. There were independent newspapers, but the government harassed those journalists who went against it, and so on. Not a democratic government. So here we can know that democratic government rules within the limits set by the constitutional law and citizens' rights. So in a democratic, what happened? Now, democratic government rules within the limits set by the constitution. But we cannot find these features in case of Robert Mugabe, in case of Zimbabwe, because Robert Mugabe amended the constitution several times and made the made the laws in such a way that favored his party and him. Therefore, we cannot call Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe as a democratic country. So the fourth feature we got here. Now, what we are discovering here? Now, the democratic government always rules within the limits set by the constitution. It must have to follow the constitutional laws, because constitution is the supreme law, as I said in the class 8 also, and it must have a respect or love for the citizens' rights, the respect for the opinion of the people, the concern for the citizens' rights. This must be provided by the government. So dear friends, with this I completed the second lecture here, and in the third lecture we will be completing the chapters with the argument for and argument against the democracy and the broader meaning of the democracy. So if you have any doubt, you do message me, you comment down the videos, and do like, subscribe and share with your friends if you find it any informative for your conscience. And in the next time I will have planned to make this video in Hindi as well. So dear friend, I must say you one thing, you must focus on only in English. This is very, very important today. Hindi will not work out to write the paper, okay, but as you are all in CBSE, so the thing must be you follow the English in a very systematic manner. You develop an interest for English, so things will be set out. Hindi is okay, but to understanding the thing you can follow Hindi, and I have also planned to make videos on Hindi as well. So with this, bye for now. Thank you for listening the class properly.